Hi, welcome back to No Nonsense JavaScript, where we are writing a web app from scratch. Now, this is going to be the first day of coding. I've already gone over some of the values and motivations behind this project in a previous video. But for this video, we're actually going to get our hands dirty for the first time. And I want to start by just briefly reviewing what some of those values were. Performance, application performance, build times, and understanding code are really important to me. Like I said, this is just me. This is just me on this project. I don't have a team or anything, so I can choose which things I want to value. And so what's really important to me are, like I said, application performance, fast build and iteration times, and being able to understand my code thoroughly. So what I want to do first is to start setting up my development environment. And I'll kind of just briefly show you the tools I'm using, and we'll start building some tools too. And I also wanted to briefly mention that for this project, we are going to start with client-side code, and we'll eventually implement the server. But since we don't have an existing database or anything like that, we don't have any requirements as to how the data needs to be structured. So we have total freedom to structure it the way we see fit. And I think it'll really help to build the app first. And as we discover new connections between UI components and the way that we want things to work, as the application grows and evolves, then we can build the server to match that more closely, which will give us better performance and better maintainability. So we're probably going to be working with only client side for quite a while, and that's the way I've done it in the past, and it's worked well for me. So that's what we're going to do. And for this episode, I want to start by building basically an equivalent of the webpack-dev-server. Now, this is something that, ideally, it helps with iteration times. So, well, we'll get into it. But one other thing I wanted to mention was about dependencies. I find it, as I mentioned in the previous video, I find that the use of dependencies tends to get out of control if you kind of fire and forget with dependencies. Like you say, I'm just going to use a dependency for this. I'm not going to bother to figure out how to do it myself, or if there's this kind of fear of reinventing the wheel. I would argue that usually you're not reinventing the wheel when you're writing your own version of a dependency, but there are certain situations where it does make sense. And so you'll see that in this episode, we're going to be using a dependency, but it's in a very specific situation. And so it's a judicious use of dependencies. We're actually thinking through it thoroughly, and we're balancing the trade-offs. And for client-side code, for code that's actually going to be deployed and delivered to the client, I'm actually probably not going to use dependencies for quite a while. But so we'll get into that. So let me just start by I'm going to show you a little bit of my setup here. So I use VS Code, and I'm going to use the Brave browser. Now, I don't like using a mouse, so I use the Vim plugin for VS Code. As you can see, this is the Vim plugin. So type some stuff, and then you can see we're in insert mode in the bottom left corner, and then normal mode we can navigate and do commands and stuff like that. So that's the Vim plugin. I use that a lot. I also use something called Neat Mouse, which is basically lets you control the mouse cursor with your keyboard. And so as you can see right here, I have a little mouse head next to my mouse. So that's what that is. And also for Brave, or for browsing, for browsers, I use it's actually a Vim plugin where, let's say if I tab to a different element and then I hit the F key, that's going to pop up a bunch of hints that let me select a UI element without using the mouse. So if you see that, that's what that is. Again, I like to avoid using the mouse wherever possible. So that's a little bit about my environment. So this is totally from scratch. I haven't done anything yet. I'm going to start by creating some real basic folder structure. And I already actually do have one folder called Money Bars. And I'm in that folder in VS Code right now. So I'm going to just create, I'm going to create the directory structure first. So we are going to have a folder for the app, and we'll have one for like utilities also. But the app is going to contain both the client and the server. So we only have the client right now, so we'll just create the client folder, and then I'm going to create index.html. And I'm going to go ahead and initialize a Git repo. So let's just create a real basic and then let's go ahead and put in a we're going to do this. We're going to create a new file for that. And this is going to go into a folder called JS. This can all change. We're just setting things up just to get a skeleton in place, and we'll modify it as we go along. But I just want to get something working. All right. All right, let's pull up our dev tools, and we can see we're logging index. Let me just, there we go. All right. And let's do a CSS file too. Okay, cool. So we've got our black background, and now you notice that as I'm changing this, so let me just show you so you're aware. When I save something, you might not, it might be hard for you to tell when I'm saving something, but I want you to know how to tell when I'm saving something, because it'll be useful in a second here. Of course, there is the VS Code way, where if this little X is actually a circle instead, that means there's unsaved changes. And then if it turns to an X, that means I've saved it. Or you can also look down in the bottom left corner here and then watch as I do a command. See how it's W? I'm typing in the command W and I hit enter. It saves it. And then you can see it's 3 lines, 39 characters written. All right, so the reason I showed you that is because I don't like having to, go over here and refresh every single time. It gets annoying. And that's what the webpack-dev-server is designed to do. It's designed to watch your files, and when it sees a change to a file, it will automatically rebuild the project and then reload it. So we're going to do something similar. Now we have the advantage that we don't have a build. And in fact, I'm not going to use npm builds for the client-side delivered code for quite a while, if ever. I may end up using it for, like minified production builds or something, but for development, I don't foresee using it at any time in the future, in the foreseeable future. So we have an advantage there. We do not have a build to run, so it's a lot less complicated. So what we're going to do instead is we're just going to have a server that's running on our local file system, and it's going to be watching for for file changes. And then we're going to have clients, our web pages, connect to that server using WebSockets, so that whenever the server sees a change to a file, it's going to publish a message to those WebSockets, and those clients will receive the message and then reload themselves. So that is what we're going to do. In order to facilitate that, I'm going to actually go ahead and commit again. And I'm going to, this is where we are going to create an npm package. But we're going to put it in the util folder. So the npm package is only going to apply right now to this, this dev server is what we're going to call it. It's not going to be used for our client-side code at all. So when I'm creating this, just keep that in mind. Money bars. So none of this really is going to matter right now. But then what we're going to do is in our util folder, we're going to have a file called watcher.js. And this is going to be our server. And then in our client-side code, we're going to have a listener. And that listener is going to pick up the message that it receives from the server over the WebSocket. Okay. So in order to use WebSockets, this is where I'm going to use a dependency. I'm going to use the WS npm package for the server-side code. Let me just bring that up. Actually, I have it right here. Let me just go to the root of that. Okay. So the reason we're using this is because this is implementing quite a complicated protocol in order to expose this WebSocket functionality to whoever's using the library. And so in order to do that ourselves, it would take a long time, and it would take a lot of handling a lot of edge cases and things like this. Now, that might be worth it in certain situations, but since this is only going to live on our local development machine, it's never getting delivered to the client, I don't really care about that. I just want to get something working very quickly. This is such a simple thing that it's only going to be used for one very simple operation, and so it doesn't really matter how robust or fast it is. So I'm going to go ahead and add this dependency. Actually, we'll use save dev WebSocket. Okay. So let's take a look at this. This is our documentation here. So in order to, let's first of all use so in order to open a WebSocket, we are going to create a new server instance, and we're going to pass in the port. It's going to be a localhost, so we just want to pass in the port. That's the default server. So we're going to pass in the port, and we're going to use 9000. Actually, oh yeah, there we go. Did it for us. We don't actually need the WS. And then port 9000. And then let's just pass in the callback, just to verify that it worked. So let's go ahead and run this. Now at this point we could do an npm script. I mean, might as well, right? But honestly, it's just literally just going to be node, what was it, util watcher.js. Okay, successfully started server, and it is now, it doesn't return immediately, so it's waiting for input. Of course, we're not listening, so nothing's going to happen, but that is working as we, basically, we are successfully using the WebSockets library. So we have created a server. So now what we want to do is we want to accept connections. So event connection. So this is an event. So there should be add listener. Okay, an add listener connection. And then callback. The client is going to be a WebSocket. And then request. We don't really need the request. These clients are only going to be connecting for one purpose right now. So just to start off simple, let's just call it, we'll just use one client just to get things running. We'll say client equals client. So let's go ahead and see if this works. So we're going to start up our client is not defined. Oh. Oh, we haven't written any code to listen. Okay, let's go ahead and write the listener then. So let's take a look at the MDN WebSocket. Always like NBN for documentation for web stuff. So new WebSocket. Looks like we can just create a new WebSocket. Oh, here's a nice little example. So if we do something like new WebSocket, it's going to be localhost 9000. And let's see if that works. It should accept the connection. Bam. See, did you see that, how it said client connected? So we are now successfully connecting to our server, WebSocket server. Cool. So now we have connections coming in. So what we want to do now is we want to watch for file system events. So let us do require. Suppose I should just let it do it automatically. VS Code is pretty good about that, but we'll do it. Okay, what is that again? Node fs watch. This is the promise API. We don't really have anything else using promises right now, so let's use a callback. fs.watch, pass in the file name, and then listener, and then options and listener. Okay, so we are going to do fs.watch. This is going to be, okay, so this is going to be called from our money bars folder. So that will be the current directory. So we want to pass basically everything in the app folder, or the app client folder actually. So app client, because, so this is where it'll be called from. So we want to have everything in here. Since we don't have a server yet. And then options, let's see, indicates whether the process should continue to run, default true, yes. Recursive, default false. So we do want recursive, definitely. Encoding, we don't really care about encoding or being able to abort it. So then let's pass in a listener. And again, we don't really care about we don't really care what kind of thing is happening on the file system, just as long as there's a change. So if there's any change at all, although actually, you know what, I have noticed something weird. Event type. Where's event type? I have noticed something weird in the past where it seems like VS Code will trigger, like just viewing a file in VS Code will trigger a reload, or would trigger this event. And I don't know what VS Code was doing, but we can deal with that later. It's not really that big an issue. So we'll just stick with this, and so here we'll say if we have a client, oops. So if files have changed, if we have a client, then we're going to, and what are we going to do? Let's go back up to the top. Send, I believe. Send. WebSocket.send. So we need to have a WebSocket object. And I believe this client is a WebSocket object. Oops. WebSocket. See, that's a WebSocket client. So our client should be a WebSocket. So then if we do client.send, and then we pass in data, we can just pass in the reload string. We don't need any of the options, and we don't even need a callback really. It's basically just a broadcast. We don't care if it succeeded or not. We're just notifying everybody. So if a client exists, then send the reload message. And then in our listener, okay, so we're going to add an event listener, and we're going to say message. So on a message, if we get a message, we're going to say okay, and that should say, this should be the string reload. So let's just see what happens. It should be enough to trigger something if we change a file. So let's scoot over here and let's refresh. Now the client is connected. Okay, cool. So let's go ahead and change a file. Let me change a file. We can just change index.html and put in a, an h1 or something. This isn't going to show up because it's going to be black. Let's add a CSS rule or something. Color white. And as we can see, we received a message from the server. Reload. Awesome. So now that we're successfully receiving a message on reload, then we can just go ahead and reload the page. And then let's actually do something that we can tell is a difference. Let's say hello. Bam, hello. Did you see that? Did you see how amazing that was? We just typed in something here, hit saved, and it showed up here. And it was instantaneous. Look at this. Watch. I mean, yeah, it's like maybe like 50 milliseconds or something, but it's very quick. So that is our, well, let's just make this a little more robust, because right now, I mean, it doesn't. So here's the problem with the code as it is right now. If we open another window here, and then we try to change something, let's add a second exclamation point. It shows up here, but it's not going to show up here. in the original window because we're just overwriting the client every time a new connection comes in, and there's only ever one at a time. So that can be changed pretty easily. All we really need to do is clients.push client, and then for client and clients. I guess we can do constant. I always forget. So we're going to do let's see if that makes a difference. Let's go ahead and put a third exclamation point. I really like exclamation points. Client.send is not a function. Oh, oops. I don't think I need to explain that one. For of versus for in, you can Google that. Oops. Bam. And it propagated here too. Awesome. Okay, so that is now working with multiple clients connecting. Let's go ahead and clean up our commented code. Now I think this is going to fail if we do something like, let's say if we remove one and then we do it again, I think it might fail. Let's put a question mark. No, I guess not. Okay, so I think this is pretty good. We could do something like we could clean up connections if we want to. I don't need this anymore. It'd be good to do. It's interesting that it didn't send an error. Oh, it only throws an error if the ready state is connecting. So it doesn't throw an error if it's closed, which is interesting. So, I mean, theoretically, this could get large. So if we're saving, like, let's see. I just want to see how much memory this will take up over time. So let's say, let's say client object is client.length. That's characters, it's not like bytes or anything, but let's just see. $5163. Let's just say that's 4 bytes per character, because I think it may be Unicode. I can't remember at the moment. Times 4. So that's 20 kilobytes. That's actually kind of big. And well, that's stringified. So I don't know how much memory it's actually taking in JavaScript, but still, let's say we're saving like once every minute. Well, let's say we're saving 4 times a minute. So times 4. Times 60 minutes in an hour. So we could get to 4 megs or 4 or 5 megs in an hour times 8. I don't like that much. Let's just go ahead and clean up. Well, first of all, let's say this. Number of connected clients. Because I don't think this ever gets cleaned up, right? So then if we do a reload, because every time we do this, I think it increases, yeah. And then if we do like this, 3, and then we close 1, 4, yeah, it doesn't change anything. They don't, I mean, obviously they don't get removed because it's our own array. It's not like a library managed array or anything. So I want to go ahead and implement, like if the connection gets closed, then I want to clean it up. So what is that? Okay, close. So close is on the WebSocket object. So that's going to have to be here. So client dot add event listener. Wait. Okay, it's add event listener on WebSocket. Close. And then let's say clients. So this could, okay, let's just do the simple thing and then question it afterwards. So close clients equals clients.filter. And then we can do this because we just want to get rid of the exact client, you know. Now the reason this could have an issue is if this call right here, client.send, if that's asynchronous, then this event listener could run theoretically in the middle of this for loop and change the array. And I'm not sure what would happen at that point. But I don't know if it is asynchronous, so let's find out. It probably is, knowing Node. It probably is. So what I want to do instead is let's just say this. I mean, that's not great either, but how many? Yeah, this should be fine because we're not going to have that many recipients. We're not going to have like, you know, 1,000 browser tabs open because we're cleaning up the array as we go. So what this will do is it's just creating a copy of the array so that if the original one gets changed, it doesn't mess up our for loop. And as we've already seen, if a client is already closed, it's not going to cause an error if it sends something. But what we can do also, it does say the send method throws an error if the ready state is connecting. So I don't want that to happen. So let's just check for the ready state. So if, now what was that? Ready state, websocket.ready state, and that's a number. It's a ready, okay, and here's something up here that's a clue. Ready state is connecting or closed. So these are probably enums, or constants rather. So if client.ready state, all we really want, Where is that? Ready state constants. We only really want to send it if it's open. Okay. Well, let's see what's happening now. Oops, I gotta. 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. Cool. Okay. So now it's successfully cleaning up old connections, outdated connections, and let's make a change. Let's make another exclamation point, and it propagated. Cool. Let's do another client. Let's do both now. That worked, and that worked. Awesome. Okay. So I think our server, our watching server is working as we want it to. Let's just clean up our watcher a little bit. Let's call this listening on port 9000. We don't need this stuff anymore. Okay. Cool. Do we need to clean up our listener at all? I don't think we need this anymore because it's just going to reload anyway. Okay, cool. So this is our really simple dev server. It's what, 26 lines plus 5 lines. So it's 31 lines of code that implements an entire webpack-dev-server. Of course, we did use that dependency, WS. But, I mean, that's really good. And we made it really quickly, too. So, there will be another aspect to this, and that will be persistent state, but we'll deal with that when we need it. So, for now, I'm going to call that a day. I think that's a good day's work. Let me go ahead and... we want to add our get ignore. I'm going to say node modules. We do not want these in source control. Everything else should be there. Okay. So let's say git add all, and then git commit add dev server, file watching dev server. Cool. Okay, so that was good. We got some real basic structure in place, and then we created our really simple dev server. So next, what I want to get into is I want to start building some more tools for our development. Some standard things like a testing library and some other things like that. We'll do the testing library first probably, because we'll be able to use that for other things. And I have a unique way I like to do this, but it'll be really fun to build these things as we go. So stay tuned for the next time. And until then, have a good one.